friends. Welcome to episode 69 of School Librarians United. I am your host, Amy Herman. This podcast is dedicated to the issues and challenges school librarians face every day. As a school librarian in my 13th year, I found myself asking the question, where is the podcast that will help me do my job? I wanted a podcast which addressed the nuts and bolts of running a successful library program. I don't claim to have the answers, but I hope that this is a platform to share resources and exchange ideas. Now is a perfect time to mention that all the ideas and opinions expressed in this podcast by myself, by my interview guests, and the listeners who contact the podcast are our own and do not reflect those of our school districts. When incorporating research, I always make sure to cite my sources. So whether you are a novice or a veteran school librarian, this podcast does something for you. I'd like to extend a special welcome this week to listeners Angie in New Hampshire, Shannon and Connie in Illinois, and Jennifer in Georgia. I welcome you and all listeners to reach out with your feedback, questions, and episode suggestions, either on Facebook, Twitter, or the email address schoollibrariansunited@gmail.com. If you include your mailing address, and given the fact most of our schools are closed right now, it'll have to be a home address. I'll be sure to send you a podcast sticker. Now, for today's episode, middle school programming. Friends, I do not pretend to know what it's like to be a middle school librarian. I have taught elementary school library for 13 years. I've been a high school teacher, but I've never been a middle school teacher. So I did go looking for someone who has some street cred when it comes to being a middle school librarian, and I think I found her. I am so excited to be sharing this conversation I had with Laura Foy, and I'll tell you why. Laura Foy's middle school program has been recognized by the Louisiana Association of School Librarians for having an outstanding middle school program, and I believe she received that award last year, that designation. So I really am excited to be bringing to you some suggestions and strategies and ideas from somebody who is really doing a fantastic job and being recognized by the professionals in her state for doing such an outstanding job. And now, my interview with Laura Foy. So excited to be having a conversation today with Laura Foy, and I really have been trying to make it more intentional that I bring in more middle school voices because I know a lot of listeners are middle school teachers. And when I was looking around for someone to give me some expert advice, and Amanda Jones, who is a friend of the podcast, recommended Laura Foy because she really does come with a lot of experience when it comes to middle school programming. So Laura Foy, thank you so much for being part of the podcast today.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
Well, I want to ask you before we dig into middle school programming. This is the first time I've interviewed somebody since COVID-19 has effectively shut down the school districts across the United States and for many parts of the world. How has this changed your approach to your job? How do you support your teachers and your students during this time?
I really feel like this is an opportunity for us librarians to shine, especially because we are who our schools turn to for resources. And so I have found myself sharing resources with teachers and parents that they can use from home. I've been helping teachers not only, from setting the tripod and the camera up and videoing the lessons myself to making tutorial videos on how to do online lessons, how to set up classrooms online. And I've made more videos and tutorials this week than I've made my whole time as a librarian. Also, I run a weekly news show with my students. And so we've continued to run that just with the few staff members that we still have at school. And so we're trying to put a funny spin on it. And so we've been posting videos not only to give information, but to kind of give people a little laugh and a little stress relief during this time. So I feel like just giving people, if I don't know the answer, giving people the answer, after I research it. I've had people calling me all week. How do you do this? How do you do that? Can you show me the best place to do this or that? And so I really feel like my background in ed tech has been utilized more than ever before. And I'm really glad for it.
I'm curious because you mentioned working with the kids. I assume this is remotely with your team. So how are you putting something together with your students?
I'm going to do a few things. I'm starting a book reading. We're going to do a story time, so to speak. And me and my students are going to meet via Zoom. And we're starting today. I'm going to read Slider by Pete Haltman. And he was so gracious to give me permission to read this book with my kids. And so we're going to do a remote reading. And then I'm going to do some little tutorials on things like green screening and how to make a video, how to make a website, things like that I really don't get a chance to spend much time with my kids on. And so I'm going to still be able to reach out to my kids if they need help. Our public library has amazing resources and they have a lot of free ebooks. So just making sure my kids know where they can get books. I did let my kids get books on the Friday that, they all found out that we were getting out. And it was like a rush at Walmart that the shelves were destroyed by the time they were done. But I was so happy to put books in their hands. And I'm trying to think of a way to germ-free continue to get books to them, because I have some students that are going to really go stir crazy if they don't have those books. So trying to think of that.
So you made me think of two things. First of all, when you disseminate this information to your students, are you using an LMS, like Schoology, or how do you push out? Because I appreciate when you support your teachers, you can simply email them and they can email you. And it speaks a lot to the relationship you've built with your staff that they would come to you without you going to them. They come to you recognizing that if they've got things that they're trying to tackle, you can be part of this solution. How do you push the things that you're doing to support your students out to the students?
We have a big social media presence. The library has a Facebook page and an Instagram page. And we also have a tab on our school's website where I have those social media linked to that page in case, we have some younger students whose parents don't allow them to have social media yet, which I think is great. And so it will automatically have the feeds on that page so they know that they can go to those pages. Also, my school will share my posts, and my teachers who have their own Reminds or their own websites or Google Classroom will share the links that I give them as well.
Wonderful. If you wouldn't mind, if you would, after our episode, just sending me your library webpage, because I think we're all looking for a better way to do this.
Right.
And I'm going to guarantee you when this podcast airs, we will all still be shut down. And so I appreciate you sharing that with us. So when you work with your teachers, that is another issue, and you're giving them a lot of tutorials and a lot of resources. Let's back up a bit and talk about your school setting, because I know a little bit about it just from Amanda sharing with me. But for the rest of us, would you tell us about your school and the grades you teach? That would be really helpful.
Okay. Well, I am at a 6th through 8th school, and we're an A school. We're highly ranked in our parish and in our state. We have around 900 students, so we're fairly large, and we have a pretty diverse group of students. The majority of our students are white African American or Hispanic American, and so we have kids from a variety of backgrounds. And our students are, very tech savvy, but we also have a very good culture of reading, which is, what I try to continue in my job.
Wonderful. Well, we'll revisit that. I think that building a culture of reading when you have a flexible schedule there's potential for so much. So let's remember to talk about that. Okay. So let's remember. So you have an entirely flexible schedule, like 100%.
Yes.
Thinking about how you plan your day. And friends, Laura and I agreed that we are going to speak about our programs as we do and as they are, without the sort of cloud of COVID-19, which is, at the time of recording, closing all the schools. So Laura and I are going to have this conversation now, moving forward, as we are when we are usually in our schools. And I think that that's important because I want everybody to think positively moving forward and remember that we are going to be back in our schools and we are going to need to be able to do all the wonderful things that we had planned before this came. So, Laura, would you tell us how do you look at your day when you don't have, you don't have scheduled classes coming to the library?
Well, it starts, my year starts with scheduled orientation classes with all of the ELA students, which, all the students of the ELA classes is what I meant to say. Mm-hmm. And so the first 3 or 4 weeks, I see everyone and we do activities together that show the teachers what the library is capable of doing for their curriculum, enhancing, what they're already teaching in the classroom. And so really, once I've built that relationship with my teachers and they know, these are some things that we could do together, they ask for it. My calendar stays booked. Every now and then I have to give myself a day to breathe because it's a school as large as mine. It is just about impossible to be a teacher and a librarian at the same time, all the time. And I do have a paraprofessional with me, but she's not there the whole day. And so I really feel like once we got those first few activities off the ground, I didn't have to do anything else to keep my schedule full. I have, teachers coming to me, let's schedule, for, once a month. I have some classes that want to meet regularly, but those who don't, they know when there's something that we can work on, collaborate together, that they need to contact me ahead of time because I do stay booked up.
Wow. And that really does speak to how you have built this program. I'm sure it takes years. Let's focus on the different parts of your day. What types of, I want to tread lightly because I think that we in general as school librarians, we tend to forfeit a lot of time that teachers covet, like before school, like lunchtime, like after school. But I do want to ask, what kinds of offerings do you have before the school day begins? Do you open your doors when the building opens, or?
Yes, we're open 30 minutes before class starts. And we have so many kids trying to come in that we have to limit it. And so in the morning we have, I try to keep it studying and reading. So it's a quiet atmosphere, but, kids are not going to necessarily be quiet in large groups. And so we have kids reading, studying. I don't allow anything extra. Like I do have a lot of board games that they can play at recess, but we don't do that in the morning. We try to stay serious in the morning. We have, kids checking in and out constantly in the mornings. And so it's a place for kids, you have those kids that wait until the day their assignments are due or their projects due. And you always know when one is due because there's a group of them in there asking me to print something for a poster or asking to use a computer. We do AR testing as well. And so we have a lab to the side that if they need an AR test or if they need to take an online test for a class, they can go in the lab and test as well.
So that was sort of my next question. You want to provide a place to gather. I know some libraries are calling themselves Learning Commons. And and when we use the term Learning Commons, and that's an episode for another day, it sort of evokes this idea of a social a meeting space rather than a place for contemplative study. So do you in your library space delineate like, this is where we can be quieter, this is where there's going to be discussions and groups, or do the students sort of know that if they're in different parts of the library, a different expectation is there?
We've kind of wrestled with that, if we want to have, a particular space for quiet reading, and it really just hasn't worked out. And I feel like the kids know, they just naturally congregate. I feel like it's just this innate thing with the students, and you look on the couches and there's all of my quiet readers. And then you have, the kids studying the same thing will find each other. And I really feel like it separates itself. And I feel like kids today don't necessarily have to have the quiet like they used to, or at least the majority that I see. And so they can focus on their book or whatever it is they're doing while there's, some milling in the background, and it doesn't bother them at all. And so I find that just naturally on their own, they found something that's worked for them.
Okay, terrific. Lunchtime. Do you open your doors at lunch?
I do. Now, if I have a class, the 2 grades that I'm not teaching that day will not get to come in for recess, and they get very upset. They knock on the door even though it's closed, and then they come and they stare through the window like sad puppy dogs. But this is something that they really look forward to because they get such little free time during the day. And so whenever I'm open, we have board games, we have puzzles. They can do something on the computer, school related. A lot of them just sit and talk. You always have your little quiet readers, but it's a place for them to just relax and let loose, to an extent. And so I have a bearded dragon as our library pet. So they take the bearded dragon out, and it's like feeding time at the zoo. They feed him his insects and play with them. And I really feel like, the kids that come in at recess really just need that time to decompress.
Sure.
Without somebody, telling them you have to read or you have to be quiet if you're in here. And so I liked what you said about the learning commons, because I really feel like that's what we've evolved into, more of that and a media center than, your traditional library.
Sure. Well, I still remember talking to Amanda about her hissing cockroaches. So my concern is if you had both, that your bearded dragon would get rid of your hissing cockroaches.
Yes, in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
We've had that discussion as well.
Yeah. So, how about after school? I mean, I'm sure I know you have a busing district. Are there students who find themselves waiting to get picked up? Do you become a place where people are sort of killing time until somebody can get them? Or do you close the doors when the bell rings?
I stay open a little while. I have, the students that are doing those last minute check-in and check-outs. But my students, are supposed to stay with their classes until their buses are there, or it's time for their parents to pick them up. And so I don't have a whole lot of action in the afternoon. I do have, however, when basketball season is going on, we have one team that waits around until the other team is done practicing. And so the library just kind of impromptu became their study space. They just have all ended up showing up and, kind of not without anybody prompting them, but they come in there now, and I help them with their homework or just to have a place to work together. And then we have a few after school clubs that we do. We were about to start our Rubik's Cube Club, which was going to meet every Tuesday after school and make mosaics and have competitions, but that got shut down. So we'll have to, put that off for next year. And I have a Battle of the Books tournament that myself and 2 other librarians started in our area. And so we have a team that meets several afternoons to practice. And so it's just kind of, here and there we'll have meetings after school, but it's not a daily thing.
Well, and I think that you're touching upon something that, you mentioned the athletes coming in and using your space when you're waiting for the weight room or you're waiting for the gym to become available. And I don't discount, I think the idea of a team that studies together, supports one another, and these are good habits to reinforce, to see your teammates, studying. But I also want to touch upon the idea that some of your programming is really reaching out to students who would otherwise not find, say, a sport to play. You might have kids who come to the library because they aren't involved in sports. They don't play in the band, or, I'm thinking about some of your students who are perhaps a little more comfortable with a book than they are with large groups of chaos and friends.
Right.
So,
right.
I do know the Rubik's Cube has been just a wonderful thing in our house. One of my sons discovered it in the 5th grade, and they had a club. And not everybody joined the club, but the kids who did shared one thing in common, and there was this absolute fascination with algorithms. I mean, when your 5th grade kid comes home and starts self-teaching himself on YouTube with the algorithms and the Rubik's cubes, and it was a point of pride. It was something he could feel good about. And this is a kid who did not enjoy competitive sports, especially because they put him on the front line, and he'd come out with bruises on his little football team. And so the Rubik's Cube is fantastic. And what a great program, because you're not talking about a very expensive investment at all.
No. And I love what you said about the algorithms, because I noticed the morning of when the club's going to meet, they're asking me if they can print. They've typed up these algorithms on Word documents, and they are distributing them to their friends. They really get into it. I love to see it. And I cannot solve a Rubik's Cube to save my life, but I can provide the place for them to do it, and teach each other.
I think your point is also good, that the fact that you host that space, that gathering space, does not necessitate that you are therefore the expert. You are a sponsor. You could be a club sponsor without taking charge of the actual instruction or direction of the group. But as the staff member who's a supervisor, a person who will say, I will be supervising this group during these meetings, is huge. It's very generous. I know I've talked to librarians who host the D&D, the Dungeons and Dragons, not because they know how to play. They do not know how to play, but they host. And I think that is as much about your programming. I mean, when we talk about space, you are a resource, your collection's a resource, but your space is a resource.
Yes, that's a huge resource. Yeah.
Okay. All right. We're on the same page. I get it. Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
You answered some of this, but I had a question, because a lot of librarians, when they first, I come from a fixed, I've been 13 years fixed, and I've mentioned that a zillion times on this podcast. I have never been in charge of my schedule, ever, ever. But as somebody who teaches a flexible schedule, sometimes I hear school librarians say, I'm really they're concerned about this open space on their calendar. Like, if somebody were to walk by the library and they didn't actively have a class in there at that time, well, maybe we need to give the librarian something to do, if you, but a lot of times people who are new to the flexible schedule, it's like, what do I do to bring in people so I look like I'm doing my job?
Right. Well, let me just say first that I was a teacher for 10 years before I became a librarian, and I am twice as busy as a flexible librarian as I ever was as a teacher. And I was busy as a teacher, but I can say honestly, and you could ask my para this, from the time I get there until I leave, I don't sit down. I eat lunch while I'm working every day. Sometimes I forget to take bathroom breaks. And anyone that spends 1 minute in the library, or even just sees, that's another reason why having social media is important, not to, say, hey, look at my library, but to say, these are the services that we're offering our school and our community. And so anyone that spends any time in the library can tell you that I don't need extra duties. I've taken on some just out of things that I'm interested in. For instance, I started doing the digital media for our school and making movies because I got my master's in ed tech, and I am just a tech junkie. I love it. And so I found a way to incorporate that into my schedule. And there's some days when I have classes, I have to film. I have a segment called Book Face Friday. I'm sure you've seen those, that my kids are religious about it. And so we may have 3 or 4 things going on at once in my library at any given time. We may have, normally my classes meet. And one of the main reasons the teachers like to meet in the library is we have the capacity to fit 2 classes at a time. And so 2 classes can work together and collaborate in a way that you just can't do in a classroom. And one thing that made that possible, I'm sure Amanda talked about, we had a 1,000-year flood back in 2016. And my library took on 4 feet of water and we lost everything. 23,000 books, everything. I mean, the room was just bare when they were done. And so one thing that did was it got rid of that traditional kind of there's shelves in the middle to now there's just shelves around the outside perimeter, and the inside are tables, couches, bean bags. So it's really a great meeting space now. And so the teachers are really looking to use that as much as they can.
Well, and what year did you say that happened?
This was in 2016.
Okay. And, the idea of starting over again is, while daunting, that's, huge. On the other hand, it sort of forced your hand. You're sort of forced. And I think that, what a sort of blessing in disguise, because while you lament what you lost, you, in starting over, can reimagine your space in a way that you didn't have before.
Right.
And I, it's not a good comparison, but the Chicago fire that destroyed most of Chicago, they were able to rebuild a city with the future in mind. We are, let's see, what are we, 6 hours away driving? I'm in Detroit. We did not have a fire we did, but it was in the 1700s, not in the late 1800s. And so Chicago has been able to, in many ways, it's constructed in a way that allows for public transportation. Detroit was not built for public transportation. But that's a bad comparison, but I just throw it at you because in the ruin of this flood, you could also see the opportunity that this presented.
Right. And I took over the librarian that was there at the time of the flood. She was about to retire, and that really, at that point she was done, But so when I took the job, it was just basically a storage space. The walls were white. And so I had been working side by side with Amanda Jones at her library. I was the teacher there. And so I got to really kind of get my feet wet before taking on my own library. So when I got there, and I thought, if I was a teacher, what would I want my library to offer? And so I got to just build from the ground up based on, what I knew as a teacher. And I really feel like that made all the difference. Because before I got there, the library was very traditional. It was run like a high school because my administration, that was their background and that was what they were familiar with. And so the students just kind of came in if they needed to. There was no push to come in as a class. And so it really was not utilized. And so the flood washed all that away. And the collection needed to be weeded anyway. It was an older collection, so the flood took care of that. And so now it's a place that is inviting. You had asked me about, how do you get the kids to come in if they're not coming in to check books out? But one thing that I do with my teachers is the students, I'm pretty much open like a public library. There are students in and out all day, whether I have a class or not. I have a self-checkout system set up, and I've trained the students. They never have to come and talk to me unless, they need help finding a book. but they know how to find the book on their own. They know how to check it out on their own without me ever stopping what I'm doing. And so we have teachers in and out, sending, if the child's done with their work for the day, sometimes they let them come in and read as a positive behavior support. Or if they're done taking a test and the teacher says, okay, you're going to read the rest of the hour, and they don't have books, they send them. So kids can come get books, in the morning, during recess, after. So they have plenty of opportunities all day to come in. And that was something that they really didn't do before I got there.
Can I ask you, because I know somebody listening is wondering this, and so am I. When kids come down, is there any sort of directive or communication that comes with them from their teacher, just as a sort of an accountability piece? And are you keeping track of these statistics?
Yes. The teachers, their general rule is you have 10 to 15 minutes to find a book and come back to class. They'll send them maybe, 2 or 3 at a time. And every now and then a teacher will say, you know what, there's a lot of you that need to change books out. We're going to go as a class. And so I have a few teachers that will do that, and they'll let me know ahead of time. Hey, on Mondays or Wednesdays, if you're open, if you have no classes, can we come? And also I have teachers that, I know they only send their classes on certain days. And so the teachers do lay out expectations on what you're supposed to do when you're there. And I tell the teachers, if you want to allow them to have some free time as a way to, to say good job for all your hard work, just let me know so I can, understand why the child's, just randomly sitting there on the couch reading. And I have a group of kids that I call the couch crew, because their class is reading one of the Hunger Games novels right now, and they had already read it. And so their teacher offered them another choice. And so this group comes every day during 6th hour, and they all sit on the couch and they read their other choice. And then the teacher comes and gets them when they're done. And we've been doing this, the whole year. So,
well, and it's almost like you're sort of a backup, like a book club for, and I imagine that these students are motivated because it is perceived as a privilege.
Yes.
It is conceived because these are readers who will now shift their attention rather than being compelled to read something again that somebody has already read. I have students like this when teachers say, hey, we're going to read Wonder. And I said, we've all done that. So you do have to every once in a while come up with another fantastic book. And part of that's, our job to make sure that we're bringing the newest fiction that will keep our students excited, not just our students, but also our teachers. So I am curious, do you ever proctor? I mean, if you have a student has a teacher ever used the library for students to take a test?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, all the time. And that's something that we're still kind of figuring out. So if there's a day one of the few days I don't have classes, and the teachers, they don't really ask. They'll just send the students, hey, can we come in here and sit and take a test? And the test I'll read aloud to them now, so I'm not having to proctor a test. And so they know to spread out around the room, and they really have it down, to where I don't have to give them any instruction. But the days where it's kind of challenging is when I'm having classes. And so we have a lab, like I told you, to the side of the library, and our interventionist uses it most of the time. So when she's in there, it's already quiet. And so I will send the students in there with her, and that helps out a lot. But if there's days where that's full, the library has students working, and, when there's classes in there, it's not going to be quiet. And so I let the teachers know, they're welcome to come in here and sit. There's plenty of room. But if they're, not going to be able to put their earphones in and concentrate, you may want to send them to an empty classroom. But most of the time we make it work. But, the library is functioning for so many different things now that it is still a challenge to try to balance that and make sure everybody benefits from it.
Sure. I'm curious because you mentioned at the beginning of the episode that you do a sort of orientation with your ELA teachers. So presumably you're going to see every single student come through, because every kid has a ELA class every year. Right. So it makes sense. And I'm sure they're teachers you will never see. Have you actively tried to bring in teachers who have not otherwise come and made use of your space?
Yes, I really have been blessed because the majority of my faculty has been on board from day one because they didn't use the library before, and especially not a non-ELA class. That's just unheard of, And I really found my math classes and my science classes and my social studies classes coming in all the time, even, more so than ELA classes sometimes, especially this year, because we adopted a new curriculum that is just breakneck speed. You can imagine my feelings on it. And the teachers have not had time to do enrichment activities in the library as much as they normally do. And so I really feel like it's one of those things like you didn't have it before, and so now you have it, so we're going to take advantage of it. And whenever I try to do this every year, I have a list of services that I like to offer to the teachers and send it to them. And I'm constantly researching how can I partner with them in their specific subject area. And so I'll send emails out. I've really been big on Skype in the classroom. So I'll go through, for instance, and look through the Skypes and see something that I know is in a curriculum. And I'll email the teachers and say, hey, I think this would be really great if they could come and we could do a lesson and then they could Skype. For instance, we were doing kind of natural selection and genetics in our 7th grade science classes. And so we Skyped with the Buffalo Bill Center of the West. And they're so great to partner with. And the kids just really, most of them are never going to visit that museum ever. And so they got to see, firsthand what's out there, because I feel like a lot of kids in my community are in their little bubble, and there's this big world out. And another group that I've been partnering with constantly this year is the NFL Hall of Fame. We started out with our careers classes, my friend Jerry at the NFL Hall of Fame, he has lessons for every single subject area. And so we did careers in the NFL, and it's amazing because there's hundreds just for each football team, you would never think. And then I had my math classes come in, and we talked about the math of football and, and how rules have changed over the years. And it was just great to bring those real life applications in for my teachers. But you do that for a few teachers, and then they talk about it, and the kids talk about it, and they demand it. The kids are, telling the teachers, when are we going to go to the library? And so I've gotten all but 3 people to come in regularly on their own without me having to, try to get them to come in. The people that I haven't met with, I haven't given up. I feel like, their personalities maybe are ones that, I've been doing it this long without the library. Why start now? It's just going to mess up my flow, my rhythm. And I'll see something like, hey, there's this virtual tour of, the World War II Museum, which, we're an hour from. And so they have a lot of really great resources for us to use. And, I'll send emails out like that. Or if I see them, for instance, I taught Louisiana history at one time. And so I'll say, hey, I was a Louisiana history teacher for a long time. If you ever want to co-teach a lesson, I just throw little nuggets like that out. I haven't been successful so far, but the kids keep bugging them about it. And especially so, my kids that started with me that are in the habit of having class, I see the same kids all the time because, and you had mentioned, how do you make sure you see everybody? Well, they're coming in for all their classes. I may see, one week I saw the 7th graders for science, I saw all of them for social studies. I was tired of them because I'd seen the entire 7th grade all week, so I know almost all the kids. I don't know all their names, but they all know me. And so the students that, their classes aren't going, they're constantly like, when can we go? When can we go? And some of the teachers have broken down and just started bringing the kids because they're, that's what they're used to.
Well, and I think the more we demonstrate to our when we collaborate, that collaborating with us does not mean more work for the teacher.
No.
I think that if we convey to the teachers we work with or hope to work with that we are here to support them in a way that, having an extra, not just an extra set of eyes in the room, but to have an expert in resources and somebody who can add to your instruction. And you're right. There are some who in their fixed mindset have this idea that I've got to just stay on track and I've got to keep and do all these things. And if I invite another person in, I'm somehow relinquishing this teaching role to somebody else. And now you bring in big question marks, unknowns. So I think, right. But I like how the students become your cheerleaders. And you mentioned about posting on social media. And this is something Amanda taught me back in September. And the idea that, when we post on social media, we are helping our program by broadcasting all the good that right. we can do in our space. So you now get the parents on board.
Yes, absolutely.
And the parents will say, hey, I saw that you did X. I saw that you did Y. Tell me about it. And having parents on board really is only going to support your program when it comes to, millages, voting in elections to support our schools, and also be recognizing the value that your program brings.
Right, exactly. And the parent support that we've had, they love seeing pictures of their kids. They love seeing what their kids, because, they come home. What did you do at school today? Nothing, And so they can't get away with that, at least if they're in the library. And the kids are now, you going to tag me on Instagram? No, I'm not. But you can go, they want to see themselves, they're very narcissistic, a lot of them. And so they can't wait to go and see themselves, and then they'll share it. And, they do the work for me as far as getting the word out. And going back to, I wanted to mention, when you were talking about the teachers knowing that they don't have more work, the teachers appreciate that when they come to see me, I've done the research ahead of time. It's content specific. And so, I find ways to just enhance their curriculum, and I plan everything out. Like if for instance, we did an escape room, I had everything made up, had all the tables set up. They basically come in and just help facilitate. And there's some teachers that don't want to give that control up, but they want to use the space. And so sometimes the teachers will say, hey, we want to use the library, but we've got everything planned. Can you just help us facilitate it? And I like doing that too. And so they know it's kind of up to them what they want. Do you want me to do everything, or do you want me to just provide support when necessary? And so they like that they have that choice with the library.
When I've talked to some teachers with flexible time, they have made sure to make sure that they have a lot of data to provide to their administrator, saying we had this many people in the library, we had these many classes in the library. Have you in your end of the year report, have you been able to provide those kinds of numbers to your teachers? When my principal comes to me, I can display 46 classes I taught to my second graders that year. I know that people with a flexible schedule oftentimes want to demonstrate to their administrators quantitatively, what have I to show when it comes to collaborating?
Well, what I did was I like to make infographics because my administrators, they're men. They like data. And so, they want to see numbers. And sometimes the things we do can't be explained quantifiably. But so one thing that I did was I put the infographic was a sunflower and it said, "Watch us grow." And on each leaf, I had the statistics. And I don't know how much they appreciate the flower, but I loved it. It was perfect for me because it's hard to see how much you've grown until you put it down on paper. And so I put how many classes I had taught, and I had taught every single subject, including band, and art. People that normally you don't collaborate with, and so I gave them the number of classes I taught, which was a majority of our 180 days. I had my circulation statistics, which had tripled last year. And, showing them, not only are the kids checking the books out, but they're using that space for class. I really think, they kind of knew anyway that was going on, but seeing that in a way that is easy for them to understand, I think really helped.
Would it be possible to send us a PDF?
Yeah, sure.
I'd love to, because I think all of us are just looking for ideas. And this sounds like something which I think you're right. Creating a long document would have less impact. An at a glance, an infographic would be the best way to depict this. I don't want to let you go without asking you a couple targeted questions, but we did hint about building a culture of a school-wide culture of reading, and you mentioned your Battle of the Books that you are getting off the ground. Can I ask you, is this your inaugural year, or have you done Battle of the Books for a year already?
This is our second year doing it, and not only, so I started with two other teachers, and we are all three from different areas, and one's a private school and two of us are public schools. But we have worked together before, and we got it up to 4 schools this year. We're trying to add a school each year. And then I joined, Amanda Jones had started the Battle of the Books in the parish that we teach in. And so I'm joining in with her as well. So my Battle of the Books team is getting to participate in 2 this year. Hopefully they participated in, we call it the Red Stick Regional with the READ for regional. And hopefully they'll get to participate in the one in our parish in May. I know that the kids are reading the books in the hopes that it's going to happen.
Wonderful.
But, yeah.
Another question. You mentioned briefly the Book Face Fridays, and I want to hear more. Please tell.
So I've seen these before. Our the East Baton Rouge Public Library, I fangirl their Book Face Friday person, and I thought, what a great way to showcase books. You can judge a book by its cover sometimes. What a way to get books, out there that the kids may not know exist. And so I wanted them to get their attention by, filling in the blanks with the book, with, people's bodies, but also say, that looks like an interesting book. I want to go read up on that. And apparently it takes a skill set to do, which I didn't know, because I just started, hey, move your arms and legs this way and be still. And I, take the book with my phone and move it in and out until it looked right. And I thought anybody could do it. But I've been contacted by people all over the country and they're like, okay, so what app do you use? And I'm like, I don't use an app. I just use myself. And people have said, look, we can't do it. And they'll send me these hilarious attempts. And so I guess you have to have an eye for it. And I'm told that, many people have told me that mine are the best. And we post them every Friday on our Facebook and Instagram page. And the kids, they know now. And so what I do every week is Friday morning, throughout the week, I pick some books out. And I have a little table and it says it's Book Face Friday. And I lay the books out and all the kids come. And it's so funny watching them because they have to have matching clothes and skin tone and hair, or I will not do it. It has to be flawless. And so they're like, okay, who's gone on a red jacket? Wait, oh no, you're too light. hey, give your jacket to so-and-so. And they switch clothes, they bring clothes like jackets to do it. And it's something that they look forward to all week. And we have kids that come in religiously every week. Hey, can you put me in a picture this week? And so we've got this little, Book Face Friday kind of cult following now. And that's another way to get kids in the library that,
Would you make sure that you send me not only your social media, but your school's social media?
Yeah,
because I think that for so many of us, especially with time on our hands, I think that if we can look at somebody who's posted these kinds of pictures, it really does give us some place to go forward, moving forward.
Right.
So the Book Face Friday, can I just say, do the kids have time to look at those pictures and think about it and come back like the next day? Or so they see the pictures just on Friday and have to do what they can?
No, they, as far as after I take the picture?
No, like when you decide which pictures you're going to do or which book faces you're going to do that week, do they have a time to preview the book and see it ahead of time so they can say, oh, that I need a purple shirt for that, or I need to be wearing long sleeves for this, or
Okay, yeah. Well, it just depends on the week. If I'm crazy busy and I realize, oh, it's Friday, a lot of times I'll just find the books, and there's always a couple of books that I just can't find the right match for. And so I'll leave those out for the next week, and I'll have kids that'll come back, that next week and bring what they need to make it look really good. And so most of the time that's what happens. It's, kind of on Friday. If it doesn't work out, we'll do it next Friday.
Can I ask, just going along with the idea of building a school-wide culture of reading, in addition to the clubs and activities, are there any other things you do as a building to generate a school-wide culture of reading?
Yes. I'm really proud I started a Millionaires Club, and these are the kids that read 1,000,000 words. And so when they read 1,000,000 words, I have a window that faces the hallway, and I have Millionaires Club on the top, and then their name goes on it, and they get T-shirts. And then at the end of the year, hopefully we still get to we go on a field trip, and we're going to go to the Scholastic. We have a huge Scholastic warehouse here, and they allow field trips. We're doing a behind the scenes, and it's a buy one, get one free sale that day. And you know how kids go for these Scholastic book fairs. And so, it's like a candy store for these kids. And then we're going to go eat, and then come back to school. And then, so my kids that read 1,000,000 words. And then I also, our school still uses AR. And so my kids that get 100 AR points or more, and they just congregate throughout the year. I have a donut breakfast for them once every 9 weeks. And you would not believe how many kids look, look forward to a donut, a donuts and chocolate milk. And so the kids have really gotten competitive on that. But you know what, my teachers have had a big impact in our reading culture, because my teachers love to read. They promote reading to the students. And I really feel like without that, it's just really hard to build that at your school. My teachers check out books from me, and the kids see them reading the books from our library, and they're talking about it on social media. And without them, it would be really hard to build that culture.
Wow. All right. Well, listen, I hope you make sure to include, and I'll include these in the show notes. Tell us your social media. Tell us where we can follow your school social media. And I'm so grateful for the time you've given us this afternoon.
Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed talking to you.
Oh, thank you. Well, listen, do you want to tell us?
Sure.
Tell us where we can find you on social media, because I know some people will just go straight from listening to this episode. They're already looking up you on social media.
Right. So on Facebook, we are Denham Springs Junior High Library. Denham is DNHAM. Mm-hmm. And on Instagram, it is lowercase DSJH_library. And then our school has a website, denhamspringsjuniorhigh.org. And if you go to the library tab, you will see all of our stuff on there. And our school also has Denham Springs Junior High on Facebook and Instagram if you search for them.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. I want you to go and enjoy your weekend, and it would appear you have beautiful weather. Friends, I'm interviewing Laura from her backyard, and Michigan backyards are not nearly as beautiful. We are green, but we don't have any flowers, and you do, and I'm just jealous. So enjoy your day. I know your children are home and excited that you will be done with your interview.
They are inside. They're fine, but I've really enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you.
Stay safe and healthy and well.
You do the same. Thank you so much, Laura.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
I want to thank Laura for taking time out of her busy schedule to record with us, and especially because she was kicked out of the house. The children were up and about, and so Laura actually recorded outside in her garden. And I'll tell you, as somebody who's up here in Michigan and it's cold and the flowers haven't started blooming, to see Laura outside in her garden, it was absolutely beautiful. Now, friends, I'm going to recommend that all of you follow Laura Foy's library on Instagram. And in this case, the Instagram address is DSJH_library. I think it's especially helpful during this time of distance learning to see how other librarians are becoming virtual librarians. If you found this episode helpful, please share it out with your team, your PLN, and on social media. Look for a bonus episode, which will be posted midweek. I am so excited to be sharing a conversation I had with Angie Miller about virtual libraries and virtual librarians. I hope you will tune in.